They're thinking, this is how I have to show up. This is how, if I'm a leader, I have to show up with ego and power and control. And that's not the case. That's actually the antithesis of what is going to make a great team and a great leader. Empathy is understanding the position of another person, putting yourself in their shoes. That's it.
Welcome to the Tyler Dickerhoof Show with me, your host, Tyler Dickerhoof. On today's episode, I'm joined by Rachel DeAlto. Rachel is a communications and relatability expert. She's the author of 2 books, the most recent, The Relatable Leader. She is the Chief Connection Officer for the Match Group and served as a relationship expert on the Lifetime show, Married at First Sight. Rachel, as I mentioned when we were talking before, we have so many mutual connections, so many friends. I'm surprised that we haven't done this sooner, but I'm glad to be doing it now. Thanks for being here.
Happy to be here. And I agree. It's so funny. In this world, I feel like everybody's interconnected, but then you're just 1 degree away from the next person that you should be talking to. And now we are.
We are. So, help everyone you talk a little bit about it in your books, but help those that maybe aren't familiar with you. How did you become a quote unquote relationship, relatability, communication expert?
Oh, how long do we have, Tyler?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
It was completely unintentional, and I'm grateful for the journey. But I was a lawyer, and so I was a practicing attorney. Came up with an idea for a startup company, launched the startup company, and the startup was in the dating and relationship space before startups existed in terms of
why
apps.
dating and relationship. All right, so that's.
Yes.
I'm gonna ask you a question here
That's
because
where-
it just begs of.
Yeah, and that's where that idea just came to be, and we raised about $2 million in a private placement and launched this company. And then about 3 months later, Tinder and all of the apps launched, and so we became obsolete before we even had a chance to kind of get liftoff. So that's how that all started. That was where the shift happened. But when I was promoting that company, we were getting a lot of press. We were on the front page of the New York Times, Wall Street Journal. Oprah called in her last season. So it was getting all of this attention. And I started doing TV segments. And so I talked about the company, and then they'd say, well, wait, you talk great on camera. And I was like, wait, you're going to do my hair and makeup. And so I came back in and I was talking about pretty much whatever they wanted me to give an opinion on. I'm like, I have lots of opinions. How many things can I be an expert in? Could it be, I think in 1 year I was parenting, legal, relationships, dating, flirting, like we covered the gamut. And, but I realized I really enjoyed that aspect of it. And so I went back, became a coach, went back later, got a master's in psychology. And so shifted into more of this personal development space versus a startup space. Did TV for probably 10 years before I started shifting into primarily speaking and research, and left much of my dating background behind. And like you mentioned, Married at First Sight and several other shows that I did. I loved it. We had a fantastic experience, and it was just
What'd you love most about it?
I love television. It's so much fun.
Okay.
It's
Why?
so much fun to make. It's different now. It's constantly evolving, and obviously the world is changing in terms of how we consume media. But at one point I think I was shooting about 3 shows at once, and it was just so much fun. It's always different. It's always exciting, and you're
Was it
kind of
the producers? Was it the cast? Was it the material? Again, now you have me curious.
If I'm being completely honest, which is something I definitely...
Please do. I want you, I prefer people not lie, but if you need to do that, I guess do your thing, right?
Well, if I'm going to be honest, it felt like a really fun performance, but it was me being able to be myself. So we're all the way going back. I used to love acting in theater. And so when I became a lawyer, I felt like I was kind of on stage, and doing trial work kind of felt like theater to me. Whereas TV, I was literally on stage and being myself, kind of why speaking feels so natural for me.
Yeah.
It's just different, behind the scenes. And again, I worked for hair and makeup for about 3 years before I started getting paid for television. So I think it's there's this kind of glamour to it and fun to it and performance side of it that was really amazing. And you get to make this incredible impact. And so that was my goal with anything that I did do on television. I still have people write me and be like, your advice here was really helpful, or this really helped us, work through these problems and challenges. And so
Yeah.
when you get to combine kind of all of the fun, the glamour, the excitement, and then mix it in with actually impacting lives, I mean, it's kind of a win.
I get it. I love it. It's awesome, and the ability to make an impact. And I think for me, that's why I do this. That's why I've had to work through what I've worked through. And so I kind of transition. All right, so you go through that. You get your psychology degree at Arizona State. You really do a ton of this research. You start speaking more. You write your books. As you did that, what big pain point were either you trying to figure out, or were people coming to you and saying, man, help me here?
Yeah. Kind of both. What I've seen, and I'm sure you've witnessed this in the world as well, is that we've becoming increasingly more disconnected as
Hmm.
the world has evolved, and then you throw COVID into the mix, and that's kind of what was the impetus of getting my first book out there. So Relatable, the OG Relatable, which is really meant for person to person connections, more individual connections, is just addressing this loneliness, this disconnection, this social anxiety, because that was what was coming in. And there was just
Hmm.
this lack of confidence in communicating and connecting. And then the leadership that was people coming to me saying, this is great, but like, what does this mean for our teams? What does this mean as
Yeah.
a leader? And so those are kind of a different spin on it. But yeah, it was all of those themes of we are just less connected than ever, and we continue to decline.
So as you recognize that, you see that, you speak to it, you answer those questions when you're talking to audiences. You get into this generations in your book, but when you're right now and you're trying to help people solve this, people are listening to this. What do you think is our biggest breakdown in being relatable in either relationships, personal or work? Like, what's going
Yeah.
on in our society right now that is the biggest wave we have to push against?
I think we get in our own way, and it's a little bit different between personal relationships and from a leadership perspective. In the
Yeah.
personal relationship, and it could be a professional relationship, but it's that person to person, colleague to colleague. We get in our own way, we get in our own head, we overthink things, we lack the confidence in how we're showing up. We obviously, social anxiety is bigger than it's ever been, and continues to grow. And that all boils down to I don't feel good in who I am and what I'm saying. And so it's really embracing those elements of ourselves and being authentic and being able to be real with ourselves. From a leadership standpoint, it's a little bit different. And that's why when I went to go write, I knew I wanted to write a leadership book because a lot of, as you know, in the speaking industry, leadership is a huge topic that all of us speak on oftentimes. And I was like, how is this different for me? And so I wanted to understand, what are people looking for in a relatable leader?
Yeah.
And so it was a little bit more nuanced, but very similar still
Yeah.
is what teams were looking for. Is really what is getting in the way is people are still in their own heads. They're thinking, this is how I have to show up. This is how, if I'm a leader, I have to show up with ego and power and control. And that's not the case. That's actually the antithesis of what is going to make a great team and a great leader.
I'm pulling it up. I didn't prepare this. Excuse me for being on my phone, but it hits so
No.
much right now. So my friend Colin Henderson, who I think you know Colin as well, you thinking about them, thinking about you is this entire circle just full of black. And
Yep.
then they're thinking about you as this little itty bitty dot. And I think that's what you just graphically, that's what I saw. And that's what you talked about, is we're constantly thinking things that aren't true, thinking that everyone else is thinking them, but no one else is thinking them. It's kind of like the
Yes.
picture, right? You know about the picture. When you get a picture of yourself and you
Yep.
automatically go to yourself as like,
Yeah.
my hair was bad. Oh, why am I
Yep.
smiling like that? Oh, oh, my zit, you really can see it.
Yep.
And everyone else is like, what are you
You look great.
talking about? Like,
Because they only looked at themselves.
yeah,
And if there's no one that they know in the picture, they're not looking at any of it. Yeah, it's
yeah.
it's even the least self-absorbed people always have that natural tendency to focus on themselves first versus other people. And so it's an interesting dichotomy to work through, is like, how do I start thinking about the way that I show up without actually focusing too much on exactly what to say at the right
Yeah.
time to the right person, and then leading us to more anxiety than we need, which
Okay,
is
so
zero.
if that's driving people, like that's what you're seeing as kind of like, I don't want to say the intrinsic side of it, but just kind of like why people respond in that way. Like, how does that affect then their interaction with people?
Well, if we are overthinking the way that we show up, if we're over focusing on ourselves, whether it be in the picture or in a conversation, I have conversations with people all the time when they're like, "Oh my gosh, that was so awkward. I'm picking apart what I said, how I showed up, how I stood. Did I sit wrong? Did I genuflect the wrong way? I don't know." There's just constant criticism. And so if we're constantly focused on us, we're not focused on the conversation, we're not focused on the interaction. We're just focused on how we're showing up in those moments versus honestly, how can I enter a conversation and make it about the other person? Or and that goes for leadership too. How can I stop making it about me? The more that you focus on somebody else, the more you'll get through all of this awkwardness because all of a sudden, you have this greater good attached to it, this kind of North Star that you're working towards, which is how do I make this other person feel seen and heard? How do I focus the attention on them? How do I make them feel like they matter? Asking questions, all of these things that, we talk about. But it takes that focus off of yourself. Because I think there's also a difference too. I always talk about self-awareness
Yeah.
being self-aware is very different than being self-absorbent. And I mean that in like the gentlest way possible, because sometimes
Okay.
it's not self-absorbent. Sometimes it is anxiety.
Yeah.
Uh, but it really is focus on self versus reflection of self.
I'm glad you transitioned to kind of this from that to self awareness. I heard this from a mentor. This has been maybe a year ago. And this was his theory. He goes, um, it's impossible to be self aware, meaning that the only way that we can fully understand how I show up to you is if me to say, hey, Rachel, what do you see in me? Like my interaction, how am I presenting myself? It's kind of like this. I'm not what I think I am. I am what you think I am. And that's what I am. Like,
Yeah.
take that, but also help guide us through kind of a little bit with that self-aware, that self-absorbed in order to kind of move forward and say, all right, how do we communicate well?
Yeah, and it's interesting because you're 100% right. You can be self-reflective and try to be as aware of yourself as possible, but it really is gathering the data from other points. And sometimes we're so stuck in our heads or, with our own perspectives, our own experiences that we don't have an accurate representation of how we show up in the world. I always also say too, don't go out and ask one person how you show up.
Yeah.
If it's one person, it's an opinion. If it's three or four people, you might actually be leaning towards more of a fact. And so be open to getting those data points from more than one individual, especially and obviously from a leadership perspective is ask your team how you show up, ask
Yeah.
your team to have that more accurate representation, because if you have four or five people saying, "Hey, Rachel, you kind of just you steamroll over this," or this feels like X, Y, and Z, you can then actually take that and be more self-reflective of it. And that's what leads to better communication, because communication is awesome, but comprehension and the way that it lands is what really we're trying to get towards. And yet we're not thinking about comprehension is how people are receiving it.
Yeah.
Comprehension is how they understand it versus what we're communicating.
I This usually happens. I've tried to communicate this with my wife. I can't say it's worked real well. I try, but that point of communication, one thing that I don't know if I learned it, if I don't know where it came from, but my thought and idea of communication. If you and I are speaking, all right, and I'm trying to convey something to you, and say we're speaking English now. You don't understand English. It's
Yeah.
my responsibility to figure out your native language or a language you understand. So, for example, say we both happen to speak French. Your native language is Russian, but then we can start speaking in French. That's going to allow for effective communication. So, I feel
Yeah.
like that's how it goes in leadership too. It's the leader's responsibility, not make everyone else speak English. It's saying, how can I find your language? Because it's my responsibility. But I don't find that many people agree with that, meaning they just don't practice that.
Well, they don't practice it because it takes time. And that's where I actually understand, because people are strapped for time, and especially leaders and everyone that I have talked to probably in the last 2 years, they don't have time in their pie of life to have more effort applied to a lot of their leadership roles, whether it's communication or whether it's feedback or, building trust or whatever those elements are that they really do need to become a great leader. They don't have time in their day to do so because it takes that extra effort. But then on the other side of it, I always say, an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure. you could either find the time now to make sure that people understand it, or you're going to deal with the ramifications afterwards. And so they can disagree with this, or they can say that this isn't practical, but
Yeah.
honestly, it's the only way that you're not going to
Yeah.
end up spinning your wheels and wasting your time in the
Yeah.
long run. And it doesn't take a whole lot to say, "Hey, Tyler, I didn't understand that," or "Did you understand that?" and allow that to be repeated back, or should we change our language to make
Yeah.
sure that the comprehension was actually 100%.
Well, I mean, you talk a lot about this in your book, The Relatable Leader, but just as where we're at the conversation, what you just said, if you don't do that, meaning if I don't find a way to best communicate, if I'm not proactive, there goes trust. And then once goes trust is like, it's not, you're not going to go anywhere together. So I mean, it all ties together in this, whether it's it's as simple as this. Do you want to be relatable or not? And if you don't want to be relatable, then you don't really care about people.
That's true.
I mean, it's pretty blunt, direct, but I mean,
Yeah.
it's the way I feel. I mean, I don't know.
And listen, there's people out there, and I actually had someone say to me the other day, they said, in our organization, we're giving up on empathy. We've decided that it makes people too kind, and they don't want their leaders to be empathetic. And I'm like, I'm sorry.
All right.
What?
Let's like, how do you define empathy, Rachel?
Empathy is understanding the position of another person, putting yourself in their shoes.
Okay.
That's it.
It's great.
It doesn't mean that there's no boundaries. You can roll right over someone. You're just trying to understand people.
Here's why I so visibly respond. If you're watching on YouTube, you see it, and I, rub my eyes, shake my head, because I get that too. And I hear that from people, and I pick that up, that like empathy has become it's almost like it's over the top. And it's like, because you don't understand it.
Yes.
I came up with this definition years ago because I didn't like the idea of, people often, I like your definition, it's good. And, I picked up from your book kind of like the idea of being considerate, as you just said, that's empathy.
Yes.
So I define empathy as putting your arms around someone and walking with them. Because when I heard the idea of, try to see what someone else is like, I can't, because we're two completely different perspectives and backgrounds, and it's never going to work. And if I try to put my feet in your shoes, as I say quickly to that, it's going to hurt one of us. Sure. Meaning if we're both in there, that's not going to feel good. And if I try to put my size 13 into your heels, it's not going to feel good. Right. And so when for me, that's where what you just said is, I don't want to be empathetic. That takes time. It's because it's almost portrayed as this, let's sit around the room and go to therapy and just nod our heads and yes, okay, thank you. Instead of let's actively do something together.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
No, and you're right. And I think yours is actually even more kind than my definition. So absolutely. And so I'm gonna validate where those individuals are coming from, because it does feel like sometimes the pendulum swings so steeply in the wrong direction, or compensatory swinging of the pendulum, and so it just feels easier to say, well, we're just going to get rid of empathy, and that is a swing in the wrong direction, because then the antithesis is going to be something so much more destructive. But at the end of the day, it's really understanding people's perspectives, and then you can agree with them or disagree with them. You can accommodate it or you cannot accommodate it. You can reach them or you cannot reach them. But you have to understand people in order to actually relate to them. You have to attempt to understand them. You have to attempt to connect with them if you're going to understand them and work with them and lead them most efficiently.
Yeah. And it's so simple, but I know what people fight is, it's what I had to personally work through, why I'm on the journey, what I'm on, much like yourself, is like, is there a way to impact people? But I was coming from, dude, it wasn't going well. And so the idea of like, all right, kind of my perspective, and I got Rory Vaden help me figure this out, the empathy spectrum. And I think that's what everyone's dealing with. And I hate to bog down on it, but I think going through this and understanding then leads into everything else that you've researched and done from a relatability and leadership is if I'm an a-hole,
Yeah.
that's one end of the empathy spectrum, which you just talked about. Hey, you need to go be more of an asshole.
Yeah.
It's essentially like you walk out, like people that disavow empathy today walk up and in front of an entire conference room. You got 1,800 people there at an event, and you're like, hey, everyone, go be assholes today. That's what you're saying when you're saying don't be more empathetic.
Yeah. Don't care about anyone but yourself.
Yeah.
Don't care about anyone. And then honestly, you'll lose everyone.
Well,
it's
yes.
I said good luck.
Well,
Call me when you need to repair your entire culture.
Yes, because the other end of the spectrum is make me a doormat, walk all over me, let me enable you, let me just, there's no accountability. Oh, you did something, no problem at all. And we've seen that.
Of course.
And so the healthy point is in the middle.
Right. We both are like, yes.
Yeah. It's
there's
putting
a
your
ground.
arms around someone and walking with them, not dragging them.
Yeah.
And not, putting your feet in the ground and being stubborn. It's like, all right, we got to go together.
Yep.
All right. Now that little thing is done.
We're done.
Yeah. But I mean, it's when you choose that healthy place, like you pointed out, that's being, I think this idea of relatable, it's, oh, all right. Now, what all does that take?
Yeah.
Because we just talked about it's easier to be on one side than it is, oh, this is going to take work.
Yeah. And relatability to me is just that ability to connect with people, to feel like they are invested in you. You're invested in them. You see yourself in them. You feel seen by them. It's all of those elements rolled into one. But in no way does that take away your ability to hold people accountable, to have boundaries, to set standards, to demand, a certain level of a work ethic. All of those things come with it. It's just, how am I connecting to my team through it? I think back to some of my favorite leaders that I've worked with over the years, and they're very relatable people. And they were also people that demanded excellence. And the two can coexist quite lovingly. And it's really, once you understand that, and once you also understand that when you build that connection with someone, they want to work harder for you.
Yes.
They want to do better for you because they like you as a human being. And we're missing the mark in so many of that because we're pretending to be something that we're not, or we think that we can be something that is far more on that other end of the pendulum swing.
I don't remember what chapter it was, but you talked about the difference between cognitive trust and affective trust.
Yes.
And I think that's where this fits in.
Yeah.
Is, there's, some people have made the I would say misstep in society. Trust me. You want to do anything to drive people away quicker in today's world, say, trust me, because they've heard that and like, oh, I'm about ready to get screwed.
Yep.
But I think as you describe it, and I see this major breakdown societally because there's all this cognitive, trust me, but yet the affinitive, are you trustworthy? Can I actually trust you? How does that fit into relatability?
Sure. Well, trust is one of the main characteristics that the people are looking for. It's actually, so at the top, when I did my research, I wanted to understand what are teams looking for? How do you define a relatable leader? Because I felt like we were missing the mark. I felt like so much of what we read about or what we hear about in terms of thought leadership on leadership, it's too far down the road. You this emotional intelligence and vulnerability and authenticity and all of those things are amazing qualities of leaders, but not if you don't have the right foundation. And so when the research came back, it was respect and trust were at the top of the list. And respect's a whole other conversation, but trust is a huge element that people are looking for and demand from their leadership. And so cognitive and effective trust are really the building blocks of what does that look like when I'm actually looking to build trust with my team. Cognitive is our brain. That is our knowledge and skills, our abilities. So the fact that, Tyler's intelligent and capable and speaks well and all of those things, that's going to build that cognitive trust. But none of that matters without effective trust, which is, do they care about me? This is a feeling, and you can't separate the two. You can meet somebody that you're like, wow, they are brilliant. They are incredible. I will listen to what they say from an educational standpoint, from an informational standpoint, but I'm not going to expose myself to a lack of security or harm or any sort of, negative emotion or influence, because I don't think they care about me as a human being. I don't think that they are trustworthy in that respect. And so that's where I oftentimes see leadership. They're really killing it on the cognitive
Yeah.
part, but then they're falling behind in terms of the effective.
Why do you think that has? I mean, I speculate that the uh, uh, baby boomers, former generations, because it's been kind of played out that way. And some of the answers, as you saw, is like cognitive was way more um, impactful than effective. It was just kind of like, oh, it was cognitive first and our effective came with it. And now it's
Yeah.
almost seemingly societally, I think some of your work backs it up a little bit. It's almost gone the other way, that it's way more, hey, do you see me? Am I valuable? Can I actually do something?
Yeah.
The trust of can I do it or not really is secondary.
Yep. Is this somebody I want to hitch my wagon to? And
Yeah.
that's where I think the younger generations, as much as they're going to get criticized, and here's our choice is, listen, I'm a young Gen X, a old millennial. I was saying old
A
millennial, so
cusper.
sad. I'm a cusper, yes.
Yeah, there you go.
But it's, I talk to a lot of people around my age and generation who are now in leadership roles, and they're ready, willing, and able to start complaining about the Gen Zs and the young millennials and even the Gen Alphas. And I'm like, you have an opportunity here because they're not going anywhere. But if we don't meet them where they are and we don't recognize that, honestly, some of the things that they're asking for and wanting from leadership is a good thing.
Yeah.
They want to feel valued as a human being. Maybe, I don't know, crazy idea.
It's
Maybe we
novel.
value human beings.
Yeah. It's kind of crazy.
Because I know, and I remember, and I'm sure you do, when you had your first jobs, or even maybe your fifth job or your 10th job, and you're like, wow, that's a boss that really, I think they possibly hate me.
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure they don't have any value. And guess what? I don't value that position, and I will look for the next one out as soon as I can. They're just being more vocal about it.
Well, I mean, and again, I think kind of whether it's the change in the availability for jobs, the different industries that lead to it. And you bring up the point where you can either embrace it or fight it.
Yeah.
And is proven over the last 20 years with millennials to this generational change, they have more numbers, and stereotypically they hold that tighter. You're going to lose.
Yeah.
And so, you either get with it or not. And then I think it comes down to is why are you unwilling?
Yeah.
You make a point in your book. I have it right here. And I love this idea. I should have, like tagged it and like had it actually prepared. And I mean, I'll say it. And essentially the key point is that, everyone knows that we need to be more relatable, that we need to do more so people believe it. Here it is. Leaders are aware they should be showing their human side, yet a disconnect exists between their beliefs and actions.
Yeah.
You just talked about that, right?
Yeah. Yeah, the data showed everyone, I think it was over 80% of people were saying, and this is leaders and teams were saying, we want leaders to show more of their human side. And then yet 70% of leaders say, I am not doing that. We're not doing that as leaders. So we know what to do. We know we should do it. And yet we don't do it. And so we wonder why there's a $1.9 trillion engagement problem.
Yeah. So my mind begs of me, why? Why aren't leaders doing it?
Because it's easier and safer to not. To not show up authentically, to not put yourself out there. It's the same conversation that we're having in terms of that person-to-person relationship building and connection building. It's scary to be real because then you can get rejected for being yourself. If you are showing up as a jerk, and I'm not stereotyping, if you're listening and you're like, I don't want to show my human side, but I'm not a jerk, that works too. But if you're showing up in a certain way and you get rejected, or people don't like you, or people don't want to join your team because of it, it's not a real version of you, so it doesn't affect you in the same way. But if you're going to put yourself out there, if you're going to be a little more authentic, you're going to show your human side, you're going to talk about your mistakes or your failures, you are then exposing yourself to possible rejection. And even as a leader, and especially as a leader, that can feel scary. We're all humans, and that's the beauty of it. Like at the end of the day, these are all human connections, and it's it's all going to affect us in very similar ways to whether we're talking to a next friend or a potential partner. It's all scary.
Do you think that the fear of rejection, the I don't want to put myself out there, as you analyze back, do you think that was as much in play, we'll say in the like the boomer generation when they were leading in the 80s?
I don't think so. I mean, I
I mean,
wasn't
we were little
really.
kids, so
Yeah,
I
I was
mean, I
like, I
get it.
was
It's like going
one,
back, but
but I would imagine, just honestly, just in observation of, boomer
yeah,
bosses that I know now. My dad's one of them. He
yeah,
still runs a CPA firm. He's kind of set in his ways, and there's not a whole lot of personal conversation. In fact, he tries to stay out of it. And I'm not saying that you need to be best friends with everybody, but there was a very different way of showing up, and it was very much directive and authoritative, and leadership in general. That's what we were taught to do. It's what we were taught to be. And it's what I mean, it's what I tried to be when I was first
yeah,
a boss about 15 years ago when I ran my startup company. That's what I came from, and those were the
yeah.
examples that I saw, and that's what I modeled. And I don't think I also think that people were okay with it then. And I think there was a different mindset of work. And I have to give it to the younger generations. They said, I don't want that. Like, I want
Yeah.
more out of my work. There's an entire reason why Start With Why became a huge, huge
Yeah.
hit, because people are like, oh my gosh, this is what I've been needing. I need something bigger than myself.
Yeah.
And work was not just about, working to feed yourself or your family or pay the bills. It was, I need to get something out of it. And that's what started to shift the conversation. I think that's really what started to teeter things over from, work is somewhere you go versus work is who you are.
As a member of Gen X, as a child of the 70s, 79, and kind of seeing that. And again, as you bring, Simon Sinek and the Start With Why, and that early 2000s kind of, millennial coming into the workforce. And it's like, again, everyone talked about it's like, oh, they want different things. And I look at it as, we're a very small segment, Gen X, of
Yep.
leaders. And we didn't have the ability to say, no, I don't want to work like that. It was just kind of like, if you want a job,
Yeah.
get with it. And now seeing that we have millennial generation to Gen Z and now going Gen Alpha, as we talk about this, they've forced a change in leadership, which some people have embraced, some have fought. But there's also as I learned, and you point some of it in your book in regards to what then those generations are looking for, the interaction from leaders is just as different between millennial and Gen Z, as far as like, what I gathered is, Gen Z really, and I've seen this too, they want mentors.
Hmm.
Whereas millennial, they're like, oh, maybe not so much that. It's a little different style. Like, tell me what I need to do. And then I want to go just enjoy the rest of life.
Yeah.
You
And Gen
talk,
X wants to be left alone.
yeah. I mean, we're just kind of like, because we were raised in a just
Latchkey
get your work
kids.
done.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And the other thing that I was thinking as we're having this conversation is that we probably were yelling for the same things and wanting the same things, but we were screaming into the ethers because we
Yeah.
didn't have social media. Like,
Yeah.
that's what created a movement change. It was because they had access to be heard. They had access to speak out. They had access to grab onto some mob mentality for a
And
lack of.
volume and like
Yeah.
volume, it's kind of like they had the megaphone and then they had the volume of voice behind it
Yep.
to, really speak up.
Yeah, I was like, we could have said things to people, but nobody was listening.
Yeah.
There's nowhere to say it. The only change that you could really create was within your own organization, and if no one else is agreeing with you, it dies on the vine. And so, yeah, it's a fascinating take, and I would wish, ironically, I would wish for a lot more empathy from all of the leaders as we begin to understand. It doesn't mean that you have to agree with everything they say or everything they want, but if you want to actually identify with, connect with, and lead a team that is made up of a multi-generational workforce, then you're going to have to get a little bit more empathetic to understand what they're looking for and the why behind it.
So how do you suggest people do that best?
So I'm a big fan of asking questions. And I always say this with the caveat of don't start asking questions unless you plan on acting on the input.
Mm,
So if you're just going to
mm.
ask questions, run a survey, hold a focus group of your team and start to ask those questions and do nothing about it, you're actually going to make it worse.
Yes.
But
By experience, yes.
yes, yes. So, but if you actually do want to have a better relationship with your team, if you want to have a better output from your team, if you want better engagement, ask them what they need, ask them their challenges. One of the things that I actually included in the back of the book was a potential employee engagement survey. Again, you could take it, you could steal it. It's not stealing because I gave it to you, but you can use whatever aspects of that make sense for you and ask those questions so that you can at least get a finger on the pulse of what people want, what people need, because I can give you the information from what my research showed, but the research is broad strokes, right? It's not going to cover every single person. Maybe there's things within your team that are very specific, but if you actually start to ask the questions in a way and create the environment where they can answer them anonymously so that people are able to speak up and feel like there's not going to be a retribution, then figure out what people are looking for. You have the power to have these conversations. There's not a leader out there that isn't capable of saying, "Hey, I got some questions."
So I think of a circumstance. I know you talk kind of some case studies, people that have approached you after you're speaking that have brought this up. So it's twofold. You're the leader that you're reading this, you're listening, and you're like, all right, it's not working, so I got to go do that. And people don't trust them. How do they act to because they can send out a survey and people are like, if I answer this, oh, I'm getting in trouble. They have that feeling, right? I know what that has been like. What do you suggest? All right, you got to start doing this before you even get to the place of asking the questions to get real answers.
Yeah, and it kind of goes back to building that trust up from a general standpoint, which is how you show up in every interaction. What are you doing to help your team trust you more so that they are open to answering those surveys,
Mhm.
and you can make sure that it goes out to the entire staff, or so it's not just if you send it to two people because you want to see what those two people have to say, they're not going to feel comfortable. But if you can make sure that it's really mass deployed, it's sent in an all company email with a link so that they know that it's going out to so many more than just themselves, not individually, that helps to establish it.
Yeah.
But what are you doing to make you seem and appear and be more trustworthy from the outset? And
Mhm.
I talk about this in the book, but I love sharing the 4 C's because I think they're really something that you can practically start to think about. How am I showing up in these ways now? Is 4 C's are communicate, it's consistency, competence, and care. So communicate. How honest and transparent am I being? Am I honest and transparent when the good times are happening? Am I talking about things when then challenges are showing up? My competence is kind of what we talked about before in terms of cognitive
Yeah.
trust, but it's your knowledge and skills, but it's also your ability to seek out more information. Am I admitting when I don't have all the answers, or am I the leader that shows up and pretends like I know everything all the time?
Yeah.
And how am I showing up in that way? The consistency is my words and actions. Are they matching? Are you consistently showing up the same way over time? Or are you kind of fluctuating where people can't rely or trust in who you are? And the care comes back to
Yeah.
the effective trust is you could be all of those things. You could do everything right, but if people don't feel like you actually care about them as a human being, it's never going to happen.
Now, let's say you're someone and you're in an office with, say, a leader, and you do exactly what you just said there at the end, where you ask them to care, ask them to be empathetic, and they responded almost violently. Like they even maybe said the words, "Are you challenging my manhood?" That's a real situation.
Oh,
What do you say for that person or maybe a lot of their peers that work for that person what to do?
I am so sorry. I'm so sorry that you live life like that.
That's a good one. That's a
I
good one.
You know what? Honestly, I had an audience member come up to me once afterwards. She's like, "I'm not empathetic. I have no empathy. I don't care about people." And I was
Like, how do you
flabbergasted, first of all,
exist?
that you just shared that with me. And then I was like, is it like you see something, say something at that point? I mean, it was just And listen, there's different varying degrees of empathy and people feeling like they can care about people. And I'm not saying that you have to go put them in your will. I'm just saying
Yeah.
like there is an inherent value in every person on your team. And that's where actually at the top of the list, as I mentioned before, was respect. People are looking
Yeah.
to feel
Yeah.
respected. And when I was doing my research, the quote that came up that I oftentimes repeat is respect is the manifestation of believing another person has value.
I love
You can
that.
show you care about someone just by showing that they have value.
Yeah.
Acknowledging their value can be a level of care. You don't have to marry the person. They don't have to be your best friend. You don't have to put them in the will. This isn't some gushy feelings of care. It's just showing that they are a valuable human being. And if that's too much to ask, then I have questions.
You
We're
know,
going to need to assess this.
yeah, and I'm not making that was and my producer Alex is asking, and he knows the story, and yes, that's who I'm talking about. It really begs of the questions like, wow, where do you even start here?
I mean, what did
And
you say?
um, he asked me to leave his office. I'm glad you're laughing about this, Rachel. I'm glad because here's the crux: is there's a part of me, and I don't know how to handle this. Meaning, and that's why I'm asking, like,
Yeah.
because I know there's other people. I know there's many other people that work for this person, and there's other people that are like this. In me being in the space that I'm in, and working through this, and I've had to work for that. I've been that a-hole, and I've had to realize it was my fears and insecurities that was driving that
Yeah.
response.
Yeah.
And so I know it's an insecurity issue. I believe
Yeah.
that there's some
Oh
type
gosh,
of,
yeah.
but it's also kind of like you're causing so much damage in your entire organization on so many levels, not only the people
Yeah.
that you interact with, but then the people they interact with. It goes so deep. And it's really kind of this idea of like,
Yeah, I laugh through heartbreak because honestly, that's heartbreaking. It is unfortunate. And you make the perfect point though. It's their insecurities that are screaming. And the only thing you can do, because I always believe that there are certain people who are just never going to be open to change and to adapting and to growth. And you
having
can
been that person though.
have I been?
No,
I don't
me having
oh,
been
I
that
thought you said
person.
have I been? I was
No,
like,
me having been that
yeah.
person. Um, Tasha Eurich talks about it a little bit in her book. Um, Insight, and then gets into a bit Shadowproof. Jim Collins talks about it in Good to Great, and it's this idea of the window in the mirror.
Mm,
And it is a window shattering moment, or in my case, a mirror shattering moment, where all of a sudden you get like smacked in the face so hard that the entire, whatever you thought of yourself, the mirror
yeah.
shatters. That can lead you into, oh, I got to figure out why.
Yeah.
Without that,
And you can't force that moment. And that's the thing if there's an executive that's in that position and saying those things, you can say, and that's actually part of the reason why a lot of what I talk about, people can boil down and be like, oh, those are those soft skills and that's those emotions and those like feeling things. Well, no, that's why I research. That's why I'm a data nerd, because you can think all of those things, but I'm going to show you that the research shows that this is actually an ROI that you're missing.
yeah,
This is a problem from a productivity standpoint. Like
yeah.
we can go into the nitty-gritty, we can go into the numbers. And if you don't find this to be valuable, I guarantee you that your P&L will eventually show otherwise.
Well, I think, and you pointed, and just kind of sit here for a little bit. You pointed out in a lot of your numbers in the book, and this idea of going back to this person, if they respond to me in that way, how are they responding to so many others? And then what's the impact of that? And
Yeah.
so all of a sudden, instead of having this collaborative, let me be willing to take risks. Let me be willing to collaborate. Let me be willing to innovate, instead of, ooh, I got responded to in that way, which was just, what do you want from me? I want to
Yeah.
feel like you care, and you blow up at me. Like, how bad is it everywhere else that people are just scared to even walk into work?
Yep.
They avoid interaction, or as one person that interacts with them, I just became a blind sheep and did whatever they said.
Which is so unfortunate and will absolutely stagnate any organization. I mean, it
Yeah.
doesn't matter. I guarantee whatever they are, wherever they are and whatever they're running, there's no innovation, there's no creativity, there's no camaraderie, there's no
It's bare
going above and
minimum.
beyond. It's basically clock in, clock out. And you
Yeah.
might get it, depending on whatever it is, you may get the bare minimum of sales or
Yeah.
success, but you're missing out on so much opportunity and honestly just goodwill. Like, gosh, I want to wake up, 20 years from now and be like, wow, everybody that worked with me really had a great experience. Like, to me, I'm like,
Yeah.
that fills me up to be, I'm a good person. And I guess you can't expect that from other people, but I mean, at
I
least,
think people want it, but it comes back to what you said. They want it because they point to they want it, right?
yeah,
Your comment about people know it, they just don't do it. And that's where there's a barrier that is keeping them from it. And
yeah,
I think what's happened in our post COVID and social media and everything else, that the I would say intrinsic barriers have just gotten deeper and deeper in foundation because we're not willing to be authentic and vulnerable and say, I don't have the answers and I'm wearing a
yeah,
black shirt so you can't see my sweaty pits. That's life, right? As that was told to me, as kind of a friend said that. And I'm like, oh, I embrace that. That's true. But
yeah,
then all of a sudden, as you laugh, people are like, oh, they're real. Yeah. It doesn't affect my ability to do the job,
yeah.
but I get it. So I'm real.
Yeah, and at the end of the day, again, it's not necessarily because I'm sure there's people listening, or maybe they're probably not listening because this would probably try to get them to grow and adapt. But there are people out there that have no desire to get better or to be a better leader or to be a more relatable leader. And they will have some measure of success depending
Mhm.
on, the company
Yeah.
they run, the product they
Yeah.
sell, or whatever it
Or
is
the
that they're
environment in that company
advertising.
that almost still wants to hold on to it because they think, well, that's the way it was. That's the way it should be.
Yeah. But it's to me, I'm like, gosh, like, can you just look at the potential here? And I talk about this with Microsoft often, where, listen, Steve Ballmer is an very interesting
Yeah.
CEO. He was probably really great for certain elements of the organization, went on for the Clippers and is now
Yeah.
one of the owners. And when Satya Nadella took over, he literally changed everything about what leadership looked like at Microsoft and turned it into somewhere that focused on a growth mindset and vulnerability and authenticity and a lack of competition and more collaboration. And it went from $300 billion to $3 trillion, where now it's back to being a market leader. And so that's where I'm saying
It's
Microsoft was a
amazing.
$300 billion company. It probably, under
It was
that
good. It was doing
leadership,
well. It's doing
it would
great.
be it
Yeah.
would still go on forever. Their engagement was terrible and all of these things were kind of in the lower end of every spectrum, but it would have existed. And I
Mhm.
think people are comfortable with existing when they don't understand what the potential is.
Um, there's three other things I want to talk about, but I'm going to talk about one of them that's going to be twofold. And we're
Okay.
going to do two for one because I know
All right.
I want
Twofer.
to be respectful of your time.
Yeah.
You mentioned something, a perspective that I have no ability to see, but you do, and you get to walk alongside people that have that. And that is the challenge of women being authentic in leadership
Mm,
roles. We talk about, and I have another case study. It's funny. And there's a situation where there's a very crass leader. And they've made, just have a routine comment of being in the boardroom and making those off color, almost sexist jokes. And it's just kind of like, oh, you have to deal with it because that's the old school, that's the good old boys, right?
mhm.
And there was a comment where, as it was shared, they were forced to apologize for some of these comments. And they're like, well, hey, you guys just need to get with it. It's kind of like this. When your parents tell you to go to your friend's house and you need to be on the best behavior, they allow you in the backyard to just screw around and goof off. And that's what it should be like here. Okay. If you're a female and you're hearing a male say that, how authentic do you think you could be in regards to the real challenges you have as a female?
Yeah, I think it is a slippery slope and a delicate balance to
Yeah.
be a empowered, strong woman leader. And that's where we do have to toe a line. And the research shows if a woman is speaking out or being assertive in meetings, it can
Yeah.
oftentimes actually lower their value of a leadership perspective. Whereas if a man is assertive and speaking
Yeah.
out and kind of monopolizing the time, he's seen as a leader, where it actually works against a woman. So it's unfortunate, and for
Yeah.
me, and my experience personally, but also
Yeah.
professionally with a lot of women leader friends
Yeah.
and colleagues, it's when you are in a leadership position, you've kind of gotten used to doing the dance. And so you don't want to be too loud or too firm because then you're considered to be a B.
B. Yeah. That's
And
that's
yeah,
as I was being an asshole, that's
yep,
being a B. That's the same
yep.
person, right?
Yep, and it's funny though because being an a-hole, yeah,
There's
I
a
was
love
like, by the way,
affair.
I curse when I'm not being recorded, but
It's yeah.
I,
I mean, that's about the only one that I share because I
yeah,
don't know a better way to describe it.
but
It's like,
but so even if we look at those words, is you'll still admire and want to hire the
yeah,
a-hole.
yeah,
The B actually gets put to the side.
yeah,
And so that's where it's a difficult balance, but I do believe that there are shades of authenticity. There's layers to that where not necessarily, are you going to be able to show up exactly
yeah,
as you are with your, best friend of 20 years, but you can still be versions of yourself versus an inauthentic version of yourself.
yeah, yeah. I
But it's
mean,
tough.
it's
I'm not gonna lie, it's tough. It's tough.
well, and I think those environments that are unsafe, meaning
Mhm.
the two that I've shared with you,
Yep.
those don't help anyone, much less women, be more authentic.
Yep.
Because the reality is like as we talked about the empathy spectrum, we need men to be less a-holes and we need women to be less doormats. Because
Yeah.
in society, it's kind of like, oh, you're supposed to be. No, I
Yeah.
want you to stand up. I want you to advocate for yourself. I want you to, put your arm around someone when they need to be hugged because they're going through a difficult divorce or challenge. Like, I need that. You need that. And a lot of times men can be brought to understanding that
Yeah.
when women are like, no, hey, they need someone to put an arm around them and actually show that you care. That's okay.
Yeah.
And we need that collaborativeness as opposed to this idea of don't be like that. You can't be like that. If you want to
Yeah.
be a leader, you can't act that way. It's just not relatable.
No. And the best leaders that I've encountered, they do that. They do understand the balance. They do understand when that is needed. They understand that they do need to kind of allow women to be brought into the
Yeah.
circle and say, no, 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 like don't, and they'll defend when someone does want to have some sort of stereotypical response to, oh, she's a B because, did you see how strongly, she opposed that idea?
Yeah.
And so we all have
Yeah.
the opportunity to do better. I think
Yeah.
that's at the end of the day, when as we're sitting here talking, I was like, I just want people to do better. Just be better humans. Because if we're better humans, then we're better leaders, and then we have better teams and we have better outcomes. Do better.
I have absolutely because I've seen the impact. For me, it was a lot of bad leaders. I had just as good leaders. I can look back and made an impact, but the bad leaders that really kind of affected me, or the personal situations I had to go through that created this kind of this tough, this callous, this a-hole. Because one, a society kind of like, oh, that's the way to be, and two, it
Mhm.
was protecting my own fear of rejection, all those things. I'm like,
Yeah.
no, people deserve better leaders. And that means they need to get healthier. They need to understand the relatability and like, no, this actually matters, as opposed to, oh, that seems nice. Like, no, you research the book. Like, it really matters. And as society, it really matters. It's just, when are we going to come to grips with that as opposed to fighting it?
Yeah. Hopefully soon.
As we wrap up, where can people learn more about your books, everything you do, your speaking, all of those items?
I am Rachel DeAlto everywhere. So whether it's my website or LinkedIn or Instagram, it's pretty consistent all across the board. So find me.